So the first way that you want to take a look at your data is by location. If you are a company that's looking to expand globally, you'll be able to, in Questionpro, look at different demographic regions. The way that customers or your audience will interpret the survey and the responses could be significantly different than the information that you receive in the U.S. and so on and so forth. Here's an example of a company that is U.S.-based that mostly has U.S. Customers, but they're slowly but surely starting to grow in Europe, and so we are, seeing that the data that they're getting is coming from multiple areas. And Questionpro has a way to be able to automatically collect this information and also be able to segment it down the road so you can analyze, how a response is different by location. The next slide we want to take a look at here is being able to segment your data or look at demographic information based off of profiling and behavior information that you have been collecting on your consumers or your businesses. If you look to the left of the slide, you can see in general with consumers, you're going to collect a little bit more personal information. So that's including gender, age, ethnicity, education, any purchase history, any support history, anything like that. That would be interesting. And then in the B2B world, we're, in your area, you probably will break it down by the different industries that you serve, and within the industry, what type of customers that they are. So within there, you can further segment what that means. And then also with the people that you're talking to, you can segment by the different roles that they have. So the feedback that you get from the VP of sales could be very, very different from the person who is a retail manager. So there could be interesting information that you can gather. So you'll want to be able to have that option to segment and highlight those pieces. And in terms of how to do that, I can bring Anoop back in here. We have many different ways in Questionpro to be able to include demographic info.
Yes, Esther, thanks for bringing that point up. We have, like Esther's slide shows here, you have data you can collect and augment as part of the data collection process, either through a CSV file, straight with a customer profile, or you could update that information through APIs, either on a customer level or at a transaction level. So when we talk about customer experience, typically transactions are tied up to a business transaction, and you might need further profiling information to go along with the transaction, which is probably might not be exactly demographics. It could be time of day, it could be location of the store, and those information actually does help in terms of analyzing the data at a much detailed business metric level. We did have one more question which did come up earlier, Esther. The question was around goals, and I was just waiting for a gap in your presentation to bring this up. Based on your experience with other customers, what have they done in terms of kind of insight goals, and how have you seen different levels of success based on how they've defined their goals? Kind of a high-level question, but you're probably the right person to answer this, Esther. Go ahead.
Sure. I do believe that every person that has a vested interest in the survey is going to have different goals. And so, when I worked at an organization, we did a NPS. Actually, it's going to be one of the examples we'll show later. But what my president wanted to see versus my marketing director versus my VP of sales versus the customer success manager, they all wanted to see different things. And it was really interesting, but, so I would, as the researcher, I would gather, what do you want to see from this? Like, what are you planning to do with this? Like, I would kind of kick it back to them, like, they're like, okay, well, I want to see if there's been any changes in the NPS, and I want to know if there are changes, what can we do? What are some pain points that we can find that we can grow and do and change? And then the other one is, with my marketer, he's like, I just want to know what kind of messaging we can learn from this. Like, I want to know the value of the relationships that the customer success team has to my clients, and I want to use that as my competitive advantage to evangelize that to potential clients. So that's his end goal. And then my VP of sales is like, how can I leverage what the CS team does so I can teach my sales team how to sell you guys better and your services and the support you offer. So each one of these guys are coming back to me with very, very different things. So so we will create, questions that do address those things, be able to profile it in a different way. So, marketing and sales are going to want to see, the different industries and customer types that we service, the different roles. So we know exactly, are we talking to the people that are, writing the check for us? Or are we talking to those that are doing day-to-day stuff? So those kinds of things really help when it comes to being able to gather the demographic information and then being able to create the questions that will satisfy everybody. Does that answer your question? It's a very high-level answer, but I'm certainly happy to explain that a little bit more if you're interested in talking more about it.
Yeah, Esther, there's acknowledgement that they understood your answer, so
okay, awesome.
Please proceed.
Great. And so kind of moving forward, this is just an example that I just did. I was just talking about the people I work with, and we are looking at some demographic information from, a manufacturers, distributors, and associations. And we wanted to know, how influential is the company's partnership with these clients, So for manufacturers, we were able to, I think you have to click through. Sorry, I don't know why I'm not getting the image to show up. So the first NPS score maybe that's not the right one. So the first, yes it is, sorry about that. So the first one here, if you go back to the -1, the -14, that was the previous slide. Yes, that one's for our manufacturers. And so we found that manufacturers really didn't feel like we helped influence their business as much. And so there's a great opportunity for us to improve our engagement and give them more best practices to help them with their training and channel marketing goals. Then the next one would be for our distributors, and they were, well, I think that's the association one. Go back one, thank you. Thank you so much. And so this next one here, we can see that, we are scoring much higher with distributors, and they're saying that, we definitely are influencing what they're doing, they're listening to us, and they want more. The last one is associations. They're kind of like the middleman banking group. If you go back, yes, that one. That is showing us that we have a huge amount of influence in their business practices in terms of working between the manufacturers and the distributors to help run their business. So it gave my company a huge opportunity to see, like, there are areas of improvement, and there are certainly areas that we're doing really well. What can we do to continue to strengthen what we do best? Next slide. So the next piece is time metrics. All the information that you get with the demographics and the profiling and the location is great, but it's even more powerful if you can track how well you're doing over time. And so what we say is, when you gather feedback matters. And the areas that are using time-based metrics the most in Questionpro as well as out in the real world is under customer satisfaction and net promoter scores and any kind of trend analysis that you're doing. So so that's included in there. I wanted to highlight, customer satisfaction and bringing you back in. We know, just looking at Google, there's over 9.9 million different ways or different topics about customer satisfaction. And in Questionpro, we have a huge library of survey templates to give you a foundation. And did you want to explain a little bit more about that?
Yes, thanks, Esther. Again, so key thing here obviously is the feedback you receive from customers, and that feedback has to be gathered as quickly as possible from the time they interacted with you as a business. So whether that interaction was at the point of sale, or whether that interaction was over the phone, post-purchase, or after a service was delivered or a product delivered, you want that information to be gathered quickly with the least amount of friction. So within Questionpro, we have a list of templates which actually does support customer satisfaction feedback and customer touchpoints. We have a full-fledged suite of product line, which is around customer experience and customer experience management. And for a mission-driven company, we can talk about many companies who are completely focused on the experience for the customer, all the way from their product manufacturing to the post-sale experience, and that feedback obviously has to be captured and measured across these touch points, right? So templating is one way we do that. We have a collection of advanced questions which capture feedback all the way from simple sliding scales to NPS and questions around, what kind of product configurations you want to manage or produce back in the market, or fine-tune back in the market using conjoint analysis, and for understanding feature differentiation or product differentiation through MaxDiff. All these features are available through the product line. Going back to what Esther was saying, for you to measure progress within from the standpoint of the customer, you have to measure that across time, and a time-based analysis gives you a clean feedback, or clear feedback on what initiatives in your company actually helping with your customer satisfaction levels in a positive manner, right? So going back to you, Esther, go ahead.
Great, thank you. And not only does Questionpro have all these different customer satisfaction templates and question types to support the many different kinds of customer satisfaction surveys that are out there, but we also have new and innovative ways that we're collecting customer feedback and experience. So there's a new tool in the system called Customer CX, Customer Experience, and it's different because we're actually moving, in big data information, kind of collecting, time of purchase and pushing all that information and kind of marrying it together with qualitative data. And that's truly when the experience of insights becomes more interesting and visual. And many companies are starting to move that way, where they have anecdotal data, they have qualitative data, and then they have this quantitative data that their software systems and their data analysts and business analysts are collecting. But the real test, and more people are doing, is bringing all that together. And Questionpro is a great place to take the simple survey, but amplify it with other information that you are already collecting. So certainly take a look at that. If you have more questions about that, let us know. We're happy to talk to you about that. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So I want to come back to the NPS. It's probably one of my favorite questions to ask because you get a ton of insights. If you're not familiar with what it is, a really brief overview of what it is, you're asking a question from 0 to 10, what's the likelihood they would recommend your products and services to another person, and the system will calculate the score from, with the promoters, passes, and detractors on the metrics of -100 to 100. And, in the U.S., we know that politicians are super excited if they get a 0. So if you can imagine, if if you're getting a 0, that means you must be doing something pretty good. But, in the real world, it can be a little bit different. And so what we recommend for you is to start collecting the NPS score and start looking at it over time, because you can see how things change. The example I have next to you is an NPS I ran with my last organization, where we looked at, those that are business sponsors, primary admins, and those that, are just in the system, just because. And we want to know, who are those that are promoting our tool? They really love us. Who are, kind of laissez-faire in the middle, and those that don't like us. And one of the good things about Questionpro is that you can get that information in real time. We found a few that were detractors, and we were able to jump on those right away and work those clients and see, truly what's the issue, what can we do right away to mitigate the issue. Next slide. So again, the NPS is a great question, a tool to use, not just right away, but over time. This is an example of an NPS that's been going on for the last 3 years. So you can see, with an annual NPS, it allows you to analyze the trend report at what I call the 100-foot view. The 100-foot view allows you to kind of step back, see where you guys are going, identify, significant changes over time, and also be able to measure the success of any executed plans that you've done over the last year, and have the NPS validate whether or not you're doing anything good or not good. And also, it's really good for future strategic planning and budgeting. So you can use this number as a way to gauge the success of the executions of things that you're doing. So, for example, above, we have an NPS at 38 in 2014. Many changes happened in the last year. So 2015, it went up to 58. And then in the last year, it went to 56. And even though it's still a very high number all the way across the board, the significant jumps we can look from historically, what did we do as an organization? Did we change management? Did we hire new people? Did we fire some people? Did we change different guidelines and processes within the organization that made it easier for departments to work together? And those are things that really did happen, and so we were able to improve that number and service our customers better. Now, if you see a 2-point change, well, it's still pretty strong, but what happened during that time? You can say, what we found is that, within the last year, we grew 40%, and so we had way more clients to deal with. There's, some the issues that did come up were related to sales and transitioning to customer success, and so, those are things that the company is taking and building, better bridges to address those in the future. And next slide.
Yeah, just want to come in here, Esther. So just an experiential story which I want to share with the audience here is that we worked with a retailer recently, and they had an initiative to upgrade their stores, essentially changing their light fixtures and flooring and display. What they did as a key initiative, because that was a key initiative with a lot of money involved, what they did very smartly was they ran an NPS survey before the initiative was launched in the West region in the US. And they ran a obviously survey, and they collected feedback. They did the renovations at the store in the West, and they ran another NPS, and they found obviously a big difference in terms of whether their customers would refer this to their colleagues or friends. And they use that as, back to your point, Esther, they use that as a leading indicator to revenue growth for these stores. And after the year ended, they had a growth of 1.8% in terms of revenue, specifically at these stores. And they use that as a budgetary ask in terms of, hey, what renovations are giving us X lift in terms of sales, Hence, let's continue doing this same exercise across other regions. And when you look at this dashboard, it is an interesting way of looking at data across time. And Esther, you can drill down further here, explain this.
Yes, absolutely. And I really enjoy hearing that story because those are real life stories that, how the NPS can influence business decisions and really make a good change. So as you can see with the trend report on the right side, the green is promoters, gray passives, and the red is detractors. So we are looking at these trends on a month-to-month basis. So this type of NPS is one that is continually being ran on a regular basis. So it's very different than the last model where they're only doing it year over year. And so this is up to you whether you decide you want to collect on like an annual basis or or year to year. And then you can look at it from a month-to-month standpoint. So you can see a huge difference between the detractors between October and January, and you can possibly say, historically looking back, I know we did these changes to influence the lowering of the detractors, but at the same time, you're also noting that, the number of promoters have actually gone down. So what are some things, even though detractors are also going down, what are some things we can do to increase the recommendation of people wanting to use your products and services over time? So those will be really great business decisions and planning that you guys can take this information and really make it useful. Below there is the comparison by NPS. So if we're looking at the headquarter information in light blue and the dark, the west in the dark, I don't know if that's blue, maybe it's blue, I think it's black. But you can see that there's a significant change between the two, and it just kind of compares how the NPS is trending over time. So some places, maybe perhaps the West was going through a growing or changing period and people weren't happy versus, in headquarters. So those are things that you can do. You can take, different divisions and kind of put them side by side and see how they're doing. And it really gives you a really good visualization in where you can immediately make some changes so you can directly impact the business decisions that have to come from this kind of information. Next slide, please. So the next section we wanted to take a look at is looking at strengths and weakness insights. So not only are you looking at things in time, but you also want to find out the areas that you're doing really well. A friend of mine told me that instead of, during New Year's Eve, instead of doing a what do you call it, like a New Year's resolution and fixing all the things that are bad about you, why don't we do a resolution on improving the things that we know we're awesome at and make those even better. And I love that idea, and I think that's an idea that businesses should continue to do. Like, what is it about us that we're so awesome at, and what can we do more, and double down to be even better. So that's one way to look at, the strengths and insights. We also do want to look at weaknesses so we can close the gap between the strengths and weaknesses. And oftentimes you'll notice that if you do improve the things you do best, the weaknesses will go up as well. And you'll also be able to look at some opportunities. And by opportunities, we're talking about, what are some easy wins that your company needs to do, and do them. It's as simple as that. And then threats, what are some actions, what are some things that are out there that's going to threaten your business, that if you don't do these things, more churn is going to happen. What are some actions you need to do to limit those? And I did take a picture of the SWOT analysis. It's a really good concept. And there are a lot of question types out there, or there's like a SWOT question type, but I don't feel like you need to use a SWOT analysis question type in order to get these same things. Like you can still use standard question types to be able to identify and measure strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats. Next slide. So in our system, I'll bring Anoop back in here. One of the things that are really popular to measure strengths and weaknesses are all the different matrix tables. So Likert scales built out into a matrix table to ask, multiple types of questions. Anoop, can you explain some of the other types of matrix tables or Likert scale type questions that QP has?
Yeah, one of the most popular matrix type question is what we call a flex matrix. Essentially what it is it's not a static columnar data set. You can have textual radio drop downs and scales mixed within your standard matrix table. It's very popular. Analysis of that obviously as that gets much more complicated, but the data capturing, you have multiple ways to capture that data set within the same metric. So that's one common type. Going back to your SWOT analysis, again, a group of questions and the way you order them totally makes a difference. Your first matrix table could be around your strength alignment. Your next matrix table within your same survey could be around your weaknesses, and you could analyze the data together. So, aligning your strengths and aligning your weaknesses. So back to you.
Sounds good. You click on the next one. This first example is just like a quick survey we did on Employee Appreciation Day, and we asked people, what was it about the day that you really liked? So we actually measured every single thing that we had done that day. So from the smoothie cart all the way to lawn games, we wanted to know, ideally what resonated with people, and then we can compare and look at the different scores to see, what are the activities that people most liked and that we can do in the future. So obviously the smoothie cart was really, really popular. Lawn games, not so much. I don't know why, but maybe people were more interested in working or catching up on things. But that's, so you can say like, maybe we shouldn't do lawn games later on or something like that. So just a really simple way to analyze, the different scores, and you can see, the difference between the scores are not too big, but you can quickly analyze and note, what particular attributes are really resonating with your audience. Next slide.
One more thing just to add in terms of strength or weakness. Yeah, you're going to bring this up with the spider chart. This question type is very popular with employee assessments and employee surveys in terms of, what we call a self-assessment versus a supervisor assessment, or a 360. A spider chart is a standard offering within Questionpro. We also have what we call an org heat map, which Esther, you probably haven't seen, but it's in our product line for workforce, and it's prime time this sprint. It's coming out this release. So basically think of it as your organizations on one axis, which is your sales, marketing on one axis, and different areas which your business wants to focus on, which is agility, rapid product to market, or market growth, all those on the other axis, and then which departments are actually aligned well with these growth areas. So it's really a heat map. We don't have a screenshot here, but we'll possibly put this into our next webinar when we have a workforce demo. The spider chart, like I mentioned, is one of our top accessed chart type. Go ahead.
Okay, great. All right, next slide. And as Anoop had mentioned, the other type of matrix questions we have, which is also important, is doing like a side-by-side matrix. So similar to the sex matrix, you can realign your matrix questions by asking what's important to people, and did you meet those things? Are you satisfied with what you are? So we ask some basic questions like from an employee important standpoint, like, do I feel valued? Do I feel like I'm part of the community? Do I feel invested in it, or am I invested in it? And how important is that versus, where we're going with it next? So the next slide should be, or the next step should be, just kind of the example of comparing those two together so you can see the differences between the importance score versus the satisfaction score. So, for example, I feel value is important, yet there's, even though the score is not too different, there is areas for improvement. And so it's a very simple way to answer a question. It doesn't feel taxing to the respondent, and then it'll give you some very rich information that you can analyze and see, side by side how well you're doing in these certain areas that we know is going to be a difference maker in terms of, in this case, for employees, retention, hiring, and growth. Next slide. The other thing that you can also do with strengths and weaknesses insights is by doing grouping and segmentation. If you go back to the first part of the presentation, we talked about profiling demographic information, adding information about behavior, all those different things. Now we're able to take all of the demographic information as well as behavior information and the survey data itself and be able to group and profile and really drill down the data according to these different segments. So, for instance, if the president of the company is more interested in understanding what the value proposition of your partnership with you is, he's going to want to see, all the different customer types and what they're saying and what is their responses to these questions. And my customer success manager is going to want to look at, of those people that answered, what are promoters saying versus passive and detractors, and within the passive and detractor information, what kind of data can I gather from them to improve and turn those people into promoters, into people that really want to share and enjoy the work that we do for them. So it's really different, but you can use the segmentation and drill down profiling information to get that, and also use the custom reports that we have in Questionpro to be able to pull that information. And not only that, but being able to share that custom report out to the many different people that are interested in looking at it. You can segment it in a way and filter everything down in a way that they can look at this information and make some really good business decisions. Anything else there, Anita, you want to add?
Nothing more, Esther. You've covered pretty much most of these areas.
Okay, great. Next slide. So yeah, we're done here. The key takeaways I really wanted just to make sure that everybody knows is that it's really important, from the beginning, even before you start writing the surveys, to really define your survey insights goals and know, what is the whole point of doing this? And, when it comes to your job, it's worth it if you know where your finish lines are, right? So we want to make sure to define the end of the rainbow for you and define it for everybody else who is interested in this as well. The second thing is just know your audience by demographics and behavioral information that you're collecting within your organization, being able to work with your IT team to pull the behavioral information and have that marry along with the different profile and demographic info is going to make a huge difference in how you look at your insights. And then looking at time-based metrics, again, is a great way to trend and watch your analysis and be able to look at, changes over time that you do within an organization. It also allows you to do some real-time responses if you're finding people that are falling below the quality score that you have out there. And then the last thing is being able to look at strengths and weaknesses, from insights, to be able to expose gaps, opportunities, and strengths that you can double down on in terms of making the right business decisions and planning for the future for your organization. Next slide.
Thanks, Esther. Just before going to the next slide, I just wanted to
Okay.
let the audience know that this webinar is a beginning of a series of webinars around reporting, and the next reporting webinar would probably happen in Q2 of this year, which will go into a little more advanced analytics and analysis. So just letting the audience know. And go to the next slide. Go ahead, Esther.
Right. And actually, this is where I wanted to have you talk a little bit more, Anoop. And, we wanted to say, like these are some other methodologies that we have. We didn't cover those. And there's certainly more than just what we have on the screen. So I wanted to kick this one back to you, because I know you are super excited about all the new things that are coming out in 2017.
Absolutely. So just like I mentioned, these advanced analysis we will cover the rest of the year. Max diff analysis, conjoint analysis, and different ways of mapping your organization culture, organization strengths and weaknesses, primarily focused on workforce and internal looking analysis, right? So that's all coming up. We are just giving a sneak preview of what's coming up, and the schedule for this will be managed by Questionpro's marketing team, and you will see invites coming out shortly, both on our website and via email. Esther.
Great. So I don't know how much time we have left. I think we kind of went over just a bit, but if there's any few other questions we can